AE's Healthy All Over Skim Milk. It'll give your whole body a boost.
This is CNN. From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, John Sununu. Tonight, Russian roulette. In the Crossfire, Alan Weinstein of the Center for Democracy and Ted Carpenter, Director of Foreign Policy Studies at the Cato Institute.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. George Bush and Bill Clinton both gave big speeches today on the same subject, aid to the former Soviet Union. And guess what? They agree, but you may not. They both say it's time for the United States to spend billions helping to rescue those crumbling former communist economies.
The cost of doing nothing could be exorbitant, could far transcend the problem, the money that we have spent in the past, and I just don't want to risk that.
Says Clinton, I couldn't have said it better myself. As a matter of fact...
Now, prodded by Democrats in Congress, rebuked by Richard Nixon, and realizing that I have been raising this issue in the campaign since December, the President is finally, even now, as we meet here, putting forward a plan of assistance to Russia and the other new republics.
The Clinton people say Bush's speech was deliberately scheduled to trump Clinton's. The president endorsed $1 billion to help stabilize the ruble, another $1 billion plus in food credits, and $12 billion for economic development. But not everybody thinks it's great politics to see who can promise more cash from the depleted federal treasury to bail out an old enemy.
That's right, and you don't want to pour money down a rat hole. But certainly while we're helping be good world citizens and leaders, I want to see that Congress starting putting people to work right here in New York. That's the fundamental moral and political neglect that's ripping this country apart.
So that's the Crossfire. John?
Alan Weinstein, you've argued that the United States has done little for the former Soviet Union in comparison to the money sent to them by Germany. But that's just a red herring, since Germany is just paying the ransom for being allowed to unify West Germany and East Germany.
No, it's not a red herring, John. If you read the New York Times today, you'd see that Germany has paid over half the amount of money that's gone to them.
That was part of the deal for unification?
No, it was not part of the deal. If you look at the food aid that's gone to the Soviet Union, that's not going to troops in Germany. The Germans paid 57% of that as of the time that we had statistics, which
Again,
is when we
part
had
of their agreement when they were allowed to do the unification.
Absolutely not, John. I mean, you've seen an extraordinary moment here, John, in Washington, and you weren't in the White House to enjoy it, because from the moment of President Nixon's speech to the present, we've got about 3 weeks or so. That's half the time it took to put together the Marshall Plan, and we have a multilateral $18 billion aid program in time, but just barely.
Well, you've been there a lot recently. What did they do with the $44 billion that they got?
John, if you would like to go with me sometime, we can see some of it at work. By the way, I can find that rat hole that Jerry Brown is talking about, and relatively little money that you're looking at is going into that rat hole.
Well, why have they been unwilling to account for it specifically when they're asked?
John, the IMF says they are. Now, why should the IMF announce yesterday that it is going to admit Russia to membership and the other republics, that they are satisfied with their effective accounting of all of this and with their plans for the future if we have $44 billion going down a rat hole?
That's the right way to do it, through the International Financial Organization,
and that's what the
IMF, and that's what the president's proposing.
That's part of what he's proposing.
You're saying, John, that President Bush has got it right, if I understand you correctly?
I think Clinton's got it right in saying the president's got it right.
All right, well,
I'm confused.
Ted, we better get Ted Carpenter in here. President Bush, I have to say, and it hurts me a lot more than it hurts John Sununu, put it pretty well today, although it reads better than it sounds when he says it. We have a stake in the success of democracy and capitalism in the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union. If those things do not happen, there could be a grave danger to us, which would be extremely costly to us. It's worth investing a few billion now to save ourselves potentially a far greater cost later. What's wrong with that argument?
Well, Mike, everyone wants to see democracy and market economies prosper in the former Soviet republics. But there are really two relevant issues in this debate. One, can we afford it? We have a government that's going to be spending $1.5 trillion in the next fiscal year. We have a budget deficit that's approaching $400 billion. We are a nation now in which government expenditures consume, at all levels, more than 40% of the national income. We shouldn't be looking for new ways to spend money, particularly on other countries. The second issue is whether a foreign aid strategy will really bring about the desired result. Foreign aid has had an absolutely dreadful record. We've spent over $200 billion in the past 3.5 decades just on bilateral aid, plus billions more with the IMF and the World Bank. And if you match the list of the major aid recipients in the world to the list of the world's economic basket cases, those are virtually identical. I don't see why we should assume that a strategy that has failed consistently for nearly 4 decades is somehow going to succeed.
I want to take you up on both those points you make, because they're both fair. Let's take the first one. We can't afford it. Now, look, we are running a big deficit. That's our own fault. We choose how much to tax ourselves. We choose how much money to spend through the government. That's our decision. The fact is, we are A, the richest country in the world, and B, 4 times richer than we were when we had the Marshall Plan. Now, you may say the Marshall, this isn't the same as the Marshall Plan, but in terms of are we capable of affording it, of course we could afford it if it was a good idea, couldn't we?
We are accumulating more and more burdens on the American taxpayer. We are living far beyond our means. Federal spending is out of control, and we don't need to add any further to that.
Our means are there. If we wish to do it, we could choose to spend less on other things. We could choose to tax ourselves more. We have all sorts of options. To say that we cannot afford to do this when we're 4 times richer than we were when we engaged in a far greater effort
2 quick points, Mark.
half a century ago.
2 quick points. The first, Ted, that this is creating opportunity. You yourself say you're in favor of shifting, of helping the Russians in some fashion shift to a market economy. There are markets out there for American businesses. There are jobs for American workers, not tomorrow perhaps, but certainly in the near future. Secondly, foreign aid. What on earth do you think brought Germany and Japan to where they are today, if not foreign aid? The record of foreign aid has some real disasters, but it's mixed. I started this day in Nicaragua with a recipient of American foreign aid, Violeta Chamorro, whom I saw last night, President Chamorro. And by God, if you want to see American foreign aid helping to move a country from dictatorship to democracy, from a state economy to a private sector economy, go down there and you'll see it.
Let's talk about these things touted before, and they end up being something considerably less than
God is in the details here.
A subsequent step. You agree that it's a decent package in time, barely in time, you said, but in time. Will the former Soviet republics now respond, stop producing strategic weapons, stop targeting those weapons, start moving towards the kind of changes that are necessary?
They have been responding. Why do you think the Western Europeans have been pouring money into there in this fashion? The Germans have taken the lead, and that's proper. They were pouring it in before the response. The Germans have taken the lead in this, and as President Bush himself said, Chancellor Kohl made this announcement even before President Bush did. That's wonderful, because it means the package is multilateral. And yes, the Russians have already indicated, in fact, Yeltsin has made proposals on the arms control front that go beyond ours at this point. You know that.
Even though the Russians now must understand that the real prize is private investment.
Absolutely.
And they must understand they've got to make changes. Are we going to see real market economy, real prices set in the marketplace, not by the government? Are we going to see a ruble that has some stability now that the stabilization
John, I'm going
to
answer you comprehensively. Yes. In fact, you're seeing it already, and the fact of the matter is that not only in Russia,
how about
but in
the laws?
But in the other
privatization laws?
Not yet.
That's a very critical one, though.
Very important.
U.S.
very
industry,
important.
Western industry will not go in until they change the privatization.
Isn't the part of the point, though, that you're giving them a little encouragement to do these things by saying, if you do these things, yes, it will make things tougher for you in the short run. These are hard things to do, but they will make you better off in the long run, and we will help you get from here to there. That's part of the logic of it.
Again, your assumption is that this method will, in fact, achieve the desired result. I don't believe that. The various republics are going to have to do the vast majority of it themselves. Greater privatization, greater recognition of private property, freeing up all prices, not just selectively freeing up prices and then having the government set higher prices dictated on key commodities.
What kind of leverage do we have to get them to do these things if we say to them, do what you want, we're not going to help you no matter what you do?
How about survival and self-interest? it is in their self-interest to make these changes. If they don't create an atmosphere for productive investment and trade, they won't succeed.
When we come back, we're going to ask our guests whether all the money in the world will be able to keep the generations of ethnic differences that exist there from turning the republics into Yugoslavias with nukes.
There's a place on Florida's southwest coast that's so natural, I call it Florida's Florida. Come on down and see for yourself, because it's going to be another great day on Lee Island Coast. There's exotic wildlife, terrific golf and tennis, exciting water sports, unbeatable fishing, and fascinating historical attractions. Call this number to find out more about Florida's Florida. Hey, you'll see why I say the fun comes naturally on Lee Island Coast.
How many times I told my dad to see a doctor. He was stubborn. But the pain in his stomach just wouldn't go away. He had to go. You should have seen the relief on his face when the doctor said Mylanta. He said it was indigestion, and his kind of indigestion needed strong medicine.
Mylanta is strong medicine, strongly recommended. In fact, Mylanta is the antacid doctors recommend most.
My doctor said Mylanta.
Why did Earth?
Mister, I'm taking you in.
Marshal, isn't the fella entitled to a last meal?
Folks everywhere headed to McDonald's for the return of the Wild West. Because for a limited time, you can rustle up the two-fisted taste of a sassy McRib, or breakfast up on ham, green peppers, and cheese in a tempting Western omelet McMuffin.
Ma'am, that was mighty tasty. I'll need an order to go.
What you want is what you get.
At McDonald's today.
Don't you know it's not polite to talk with your mouth full?
On CNN tomorrow, how to give your kids an adventure on the high seas on Day Watch. Then on Cryer and Company, was it just cause or has it cost too much? The Noriega trial, all tomorrow on CNN.
Welcome back to Crossfire. We are discussing the pros and cons of sending U.S. and Western aid to the former republics of the former Soviet Union. Our guests are Ted Carpenter, a foreign policy analyst with the Cato Institute, and Alan Weinstein from the Center for Democracy and sometime fax pal and advisor to Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Alan, let's talk about whether or not we will get some stability in terms of the ethnic differences. Is this package enough to buy a little bit of calming and comfort so that those differences will not erupt into the kind of violence we've seen in Yugoslavia?
Well, first, John, let me say that Yeltsin keeps his own counsel. He doesn't need foreign advisors. And on the question you asked, however, the answer is Yeltsin and his colleagues have been doing that already. Just yesterday, there was the signing of a treaty among the various republics ethnically divided of the Russian Federation. Almost all of them signed, and hopefully the one or two that didn't will come in later. Yeltsin had no problems with the Baltic states achieving their independence, and he announced that here in Washington, as you know, when he was here last June. There are efforts...
differences within the republic?
Well, within the republics, it depends on which republic you're talking about. In Nagorno-Karabakh, the differences between Armenia and Azerbaijan have existed for decades, and what you're seeing for the first time is international involvement in that in an effort to negotiate it. What we shouldn't forget here, John, is that the other Eastern European countries, the Central and Eastern European countries, have ethnic disputes that, like Yugoslavia's, may erupt even more dramatically. What about the Czechs and the Slovaks?
They don't have the tactical nukes.
All right.
Ted Carpenter, you know, if you wanted to say what goes on over there is none of our business, we can't afford it, I would say you're wrong, but that's an honest argument. When you say aid is a waste of money, it doesn't even do them any good, I find that disingenuous, and I don't think you have to go back 50 years to what we did for Germany and Japan to see the solution. I was in Germany a few months ago. Western Germany, the old Western Germany, is pouring billions into Eastern Germany, and you can see it right in front of your eyes. New roads, new electricity lines. Now, you cannot tell me that if you're trying to build a capitalist system on the wreck of a communist economy, it doesn't help to have some of that infrastructure. How can you say that the money is automatically wasted?
I base that on a very lengthy record, but I think the more important thing is we do have one area in which we should be aiding the Commonwealth, and that is with the dismantling and destruction of nuclear weapons. We are dealing with an ethnic cauldron in that region, a number of border disputes, any number of factors that could explode into conflict. This is an investment that clearly benefits the security of the American people, but I have yet to see a foreign aid program that has a consistent record of success in the developing world.
Have you been to Germany?
I've been to Germany on several occasions.
Well, have you seen what's going on in Eastern Germany? Now, they're pouring in far more money than we could even consider, but a little bit of money has got to help. If you build a road where a road wasn't, or pave a road, or put in electricity and telephone, don't you need that kind of sort of thing to have the kind of free market
Mike,
system
in the first
want?
place, the vast majority of the funds that are going into Eastern Germany are coming from private sources, not from the German government.
The German government is pouring in billions, and they don't think it's wasted, and they're pretty smart economically.
And a good portion of the Bush proposal has to do with assistance and privatization. A good portion of it has to do with technical assistance. It has to do with stabilizing the ruble so that Western business people will want to get in there. And a lot of private organizations in this country, my own included, we have an office in Moscow, are busy at work. CARE, AmeriCares, Project Hope, American Red Cross. So the notion that somehow government is doing it all is nonsense. We have the American private sector, including business, are all over the place.
And I wouldn't dispute that. I think that is
You find me an American business person that doesn't say this, a bipartisan proposal of this kind is not absolutely essential.
But you also have corporations that are trying to minimize their risk. Let's face it. They have a vested interest in doing that.
Ted, I want to take up something else you said before the break. You said they ought to be doing these reforms that you recommend, that we all recommend, out of self-interest. And of course they should. But, you know, the United States ought to be cutting its $400 billion deficit you've been complaining about out of self-interest. But because it means sacrifice in the short term for the long-term good, we can't seem to do it. And we're a democracy and quite a prosperous one. You look at the situation over there, the sacrifice is so much greater, and the hope of something coming out of it is so much more distant. But can't you see how a little bit of encouragement from the developed world where we've done it successfully would be very helpful to persuade them to do the right thing?
Mike, the effect of government-to-government aid programs is to enlarge and to strengthen the powers of the public sector. The last thing that the republics of the former Soviet Union need are larger and more powerful public sectors. It also postpones the day of decision. It eases that pain. It begins to reduce the incentive to make the necessary difficult changes.
All this aid is contingent. You say you have to do A, B, and C if you want this money. If you want a little bit more money, you got to do D, E, and F. It's not going to. It can't possibly make the reform.
We have earmarked aid that goes anyway. The bulk of it, in fact, goes without being contingent. But let's talk about what Congress may do.
Conditions.
The $12 billion
on the IMF
does.
On the IMF.
And how do you privatize without stabilizing the ruble? All right, U.S. foreign aid package.
Let's talk about what Congress might do with this request. With President Bush and Governor Clinton giving it a bipartisan flavor, we're going to get a quick action out of Congress, or they're going to stay in the same rut they've been in?
I think so. And when we get quick action, there ought to be absolute coordination. This is one of those moments like 1940-41 or 46-48 when whatever we do ought to be run well.
I have to clear up this rut that John Sununu says Congress is in. This $12 billion to the IMF was in front of Congress. The Congress said to Bush, we would be willing to pass it, we are eager to pass it, but we are not going to be out front on this so that the Republicans in the next election can bash us for giving out foreign aid with the help of Ted Carpenter. They said if George Bush is willing to be out front on this, we will support, we will follow his leadership. He has not. Why is it headlines today, John?
He has been out front, and the Secretary of Treasury's been out front.
You haven't. So you're saying? Do you agree with John that today's news is really no news at all because President Bush has been saying the same thing all along?
Well, I think the administration has been drifting in this direction. But the timing certainly is rather suspicious. I think we have to concede that.
What do you mean suspicious?
In the sense that the campaign is getting underway. Clinton was making his proposal.
But the reason for the announcement,
we ought to focus on something that's much more important here.
The reason for the announcement today, it seems to me, more than anything else, the great service it does is to give Yeltsin something he can take to the opening of this Congress next Monday.
And that is critical.
It's extremely important in terms of stabilizing.
All right, let's take another break. You know, George Bush and Bill Clinton both agree they're both pretty successful politicians. But what is the politics of this subject? Do they have it wrong, and does Jerry Brown have it right?
I'm David French in Washington. Coming up on Prime News, combative closing arguments today in the trial of Manuel Noriega. Prosecutors call him a corrupt policeman in bed with the mafia. The defense says charges against him stink like dead fish. Another major crime family arrest in New York as prosecutors say they're wreaking havoc against La Cosa Nostra. And a mother in Florida gets the ultimate punishment for taking the life of her 3-year-old baby.
Your perception of German luxury cars is about to do a 180. The car 3 of Germany's top automotive publications chose as best in this class was neither Mercedes nor BMW, but the all-new Audi 100. The all-new Audi 100. First, at last.
I remember it felt like the hottest day of the year. I was all alone with the kids. Then it happened. The cooling went out.
Mommy, I'm hot!
I had to do something fast, and it had to be right. I called my ream dealer. He was there in no time. He said he'd take care of the problem, and he did. What could have been a very hot day in our lives was made right, thanks to our ream dealer.
You know it's right if it's ream.
Good times with friends, hey, they're special. Sometimes you wish they would never end. The care you show is just as special. Friends know when to say when.
The family of Budweiser beers is proud of all the friendships they've helped make. So when they remind you to know when to say when, it's all in the name of friendship.
Friends know when to say when.
How far away do you think I can get in 72 hours?
I wouldn't trust my car past the city limits.
For the way you travel today more than ever, the Smart Money is on budget. Now at Budget, get a Lincoln or minivan with unlimited mileage for just $199 per week. The Smart Money is on budget.
Ted Carpenter, let's talk politics. Pat Buchanan tried to make opposition to foreign aid a big issue. Now he's more or less a goner. Bob Kerrey tried to oppose foreign aid as an issue. He's a goner. Jerry Brown's trying to oppose it. We'll see what's going to happen to him. But isn't it pretty clear now that opposition to foreign aid, this new isolationism that you endorse, is not as popular as a political issue as some people thought just a few months ago?
First of all, Mike, let's not get involved in the name-calling of isolationism. Nobody's an isolationist in this country.
Stick to foreign aid.
Well, I think it's important if presidential candidates raise the issue, they also tie it into the issue of excess military spending and the fact that both of them have had a detrimental impact on the U.S. economy, that we are continuing to subsidize
you haven't
other
answered
nations.
One question I've asked you this entire program. Let me try again. Isn't it clear that opposition to foreign aid, which is something you feel very strongly about, has turned out not to be as forceful and successful a political issue as many people, including President Bush and Bill Clinton undoubtedly, thought it was just a few months ago?
And to answer your question again, if it's packaged correctly as part of a larger message, it will sell. Buchanan was unable to do that, and I don't think the other candidates have been able to do it either.
Those candidates were on the right side of that issue, they would have been gone now anyway. Their problems were not the foreign aid piece. Their problems was a platform that just didn't ring ding with anybody out there.
All right, go ahead, John. Ask a question.
Well, I do want to go back to what Congress is going to do. This has got to go through some committees. There'll be some posturing. There'll be some hearings. Is 60 days an unreasonable time? 30 days an unreasonable time? At what point do we begin to push Congress faster?
John, I think Congress is going to push itself. It doesn't say that it's going to swallow this package whole, but already in the latest wire stories, I think the majority leader, Mr. Mitchell, and Congressman Gephardt and others have been quoted, the leadership has been quoted saying this is great. They've been quoted praising the president. So what you're seeing now is an opportunity finally to coalesce around a consensus, and I think that's going to happen in the next 30 days.
We're back to foreign policy, leaving differences at the water's edge and maybe uniting in a way that was different than not being united in the Gulf.
Well, we're even beyond that, John, because I think we're frankly about to recognize that we don't know this world we're moving into, and that we darn well better start talking quietly about it.
A better term for that would be sterile bipartisanship.
All right, you got the last word. We got to cut it off right there. Thanks, Ted Carpenter. Thank you, Ellen Weinstein. John Sununu and I actually have the last word in just a moment.
That shirt looks a little small. If only there was an easy way to exercise. Stop. Introducing Walk and Roll from Telexpress. Now you can walk to a fitter, trimmer, healthier you. Exercise the feet and ankles. Firm and shape your calves. Slim and tone your thighs. Define the hips. Tighten and shape the buttocks. Rediscover that waistline and flatten the tummy. You set the pace, the time, and the place. 18 padded rollers. 6 white indicate walking zone. Extended black rollers for rollback. All cushion impact and absorb shock. For a leisurely stroll or a brisk walk. Great for a jog, speed walking, or a run. Reverse the handle for an uphill movement and increase calorie burn. It's so easy. A half-hour workout every other day can burn more calories and tone you up quicker than an all-day hike. Fully assembled and satisfaction guaranteed. Order Walk and Roll today in this exclusive Telexpress offer and get fit for 3 easy payments of $33. Don't get bent out of shape. Put one foot in front of the other and walk and roll. Here's how to order.
Have your credit card ready and call toll-free 1-800-438-9393. That's 1-800-438-9393. Your credit card will be billed 3 equal payments of $33 each plus $4 shipping. Or ask about our single payment option. Sorry, no CODs accepted. That's 1-800-438-9393.
Terry Pendleton, Most Valuable Player. Tom Glavine, Cy Young Award winner. Bobby Cox, Manager of the Year. The National League champion Atlanta Braves are on TBS.
For a transcript, send $4 to Crossfire Transcripts, Journal Graphics Incorporated, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
John, 3 weeks ago, Richard Nixon, of all people, called President Bush's efforts to help the former Soviet Union pathetically inadequate. Today's speech by Bush sounded just like it had been written by Richard Nixon. Isn't it pretty pathetically inadequate that he should need Richard Nixon to goose him in the right direction?
President Nixon called his package correct, and it's the package they've been working on for a long time. You don't put a package like this with $24 billion of cooperation amongst Western allies in a few days. You put it together over a period of months. That's what the president's been doing, and he did it right.
You're not claiming, are you, that today's speech was nothing new, that this is no news at all, because you're certainly disagreeing with the White House press office, which tried to make it a big enough deal to overshadow Bill Clinton.
The overshadowing was that it was finally put together with a bottom line. It is a good package. It's been in the works for a long time, and it's the right thing to do at the right time.
It is a good package, but it's pathetically late. From the left, I'm Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
And from the right, I'm John Sununu. Join us again tomorrow night for another edition of Crossfire.
Prime News is next, and here's Susan Rook to tell us what's coming up. Susan?
Michael, thank you. We will have further details on the president's plan to help cash-strapped Russia. Former President Jimmy Carter gets into the campaign fray with comments about the Democrats who want the White House and students who are worried about much more than just getting an education. They're worried about staying alive. Prime News is next.
Coming up, Prime News, followed by Larry King Live after a word from your local cable system here on CNN.
If you'd like to give a special gift to a boy or girl 8 years old and up, get your pencil ready and write down this number because I've got just the answer for you. It's National Geographic World Magazine, published especially for kids by the National Geographic Society. It brings real-life adventure, page after page of fascinating articles and pictures in National Geographic color. Young readers will have fun exploring Earth, sea, and sky, and the environment and ways to protect it. And enjoy articles on sports, hobbies, science, and adventure. It entertains while it fulfills curiosity.
stimulates the imagination, and encourages reading. And when you order the 12 colorful issues of World, your child also becomes a junior member of the National Geographic Society. Your child will receive this welcome kit that includes a junior membership certificate, an ID card, a colorful iron-on emblem, plus the chance to compete for a $5,000 scholarship. Your youngster can feel part of National Geographic's century-old tradition of promoting research, exploration, and geography education. Only $12.95 for junior membership and 12 issues of World magazine and much more. Compare this unique once-a-month, 12 times a year gift to a single gift from a toy store, and you can see what a bargain this is. No shopping, no wrapping, no shipping. You cannot get World magazine at a newsstand or a bookstore. You can only get it as a junior member of the society. Just call with that special child's name and address today. Call 1-800-257-1257.